Welcome to the NonProfit Podcast Network. Our purpose and passion are simple: to highlight the incredible nonprofits that make our communities stronger. Each episode is a chance for these organizations to tell their story in their words, sharing not just what they do, but why it matters to the people they serve, to their supporters, and to all of us who believe in the power of community. Through podcasting, we hope to amplify their voices, inspire connection, and give them one more tool to impact the hearts of donors, partners, and neighbors alike. This work is made possible through the generous support of our incredible partners: Cap Trust, offering fiduciary advice for endowments and foundations; Western Health Advantage, a local not-for-profit health plan that believes healthcare is more than coverage. It's about caring. CORE, executive leadership and comprehensive support services. They work in it so you can work on it. And Five Star Bank, a local, trusted advisor to community nonprofits for over 25 years. Violence doesn't always look the way we expect it to. It may not begin with physical abuse. It can appear as control, coercion, financial abuse, isolation, stalking, cultural pressure, or manipulation. And very often it's happening right in front of us. A few weeks ago, I had the opportunity to moderate a conversation on preventing violence at a conference on that very subject presented by my sister's house. Our time was short, and that left us feeling like we had only scratched the surface. So I invited 4 of the leaders from that discussion back to continue it. Beth Hassett of Weave, Ashlie Bryant of Strands Global Foundation, Nguyen of my sister's house, and Joyce Bilyeu of the Sacramento Regional Family Justice Center joined me for a much deeper conversation about what preventing violence really requires. We talk about recognizing the warning signs, intervening before violence escalates, the importance of culturally responsive services, and why collaboration between organizations can literally save lives. But perhaps the biggest takeaway is this: preventing violence isn't simply the responsibility of these 4 organizations. It belongs to all of us. This is Preventing Violence Continued. Beth Hassett, Ashlie Bryant, Nguyen, and Joyce Bilyeu, welcome to this premiere content episode, which is a follow-up from an event that we started a few weeks back at the Preventing Violence Sessions Seminar. Christine, what do we call this? What was your event labeled?
It was our youth violence, the 4 Ps in preventing violence.
Okay. And we got a little bit short because of timing. We felt that there was so much more to add to the conversation that you have all been gracious with your time to allow us to do a full-length episode to discuss preventing violence. So let me start with you, Beth. If you would give us a background on who it is you serve and the services you provide at Weave.
Certainly. So Weave has been serving Sacramento County since 1978. We started as a domestic violence agency. In 1988, we became the Rape Crisis Center for Sacramento County. So we are the only rape crisis center in our community. And we also serve victims of sex trafficking. So men, women, children, and youth all receive our services, including robust housing, counseling, outreach, and connecting people to resources, as well as legal services and sexual assault accompaniments.
I love the fact that you addressed both men and women, too, because I think there's this preconceived notion that in any of these situations, it's typically just women, when that's not necessarily the case. Ashlie, would you walk us through a little bit of the organization 3 Strands Global for us?
Yeah, you bet. So Three Strands Global Foundation has been focused on ending human trafficking for the last 16 years. We have a drop-in center in downtown Sacramento where we serve anywhere from 15 to 40 drop-ins a day. And those who are vulnerable to human trafficking, both forced labor as well as commercial sexual exploitation. And then we also have an Employ Plus Empower program where we have placed 1,500 survivors into sustainable jobs. throughout the greater Sacramento counties. And then we have a survivor advisory board of 21 survivor leaders who work with us both on policy and as well as on policies internally, externally, programming that we pay as consultants for the work that we do. That's the direct services sort of leg. The other leg that we have at Three Strands, or Three Strands, the strands we have is on prevention. So we have a prevention education program that's national, that is in 17 different states across the U.S., from kindergarten all the way to 12th grade. And all focused on how do we prevent the crime before it starts. And then the last of the strands is on policy. And so that is our focus both in California as well as across the U.S. and federally on all sorts of different legislation addressing violence, human trafficking, and making sure that survivor voices are at the center of our conversations.
And Ashlie, did I see that you just launched a mini course of sorts on prevention?
Yes, we have a separate actually website from the Three Strands site that is our courses site, and we have a course on safety and awareness, and so very tailored to our teen population to make sure that they can build a safety plan for themselves and know who trusted adults in their lives are and what are those characteristics of a trusted adult.
Thank you. Christine, would you address My Sister's House? Who it is you serve and services you provide?
Yes, thank you, Jeff. Yes, so My Sister's House, similar to Weave, we started in 2001. Well, actually, we started first as a woman to work support group. We feel that, in order to gain independence from an abusive partner, our client needed to basically work. And in order to work, they needed some skills because we serve immigrant and refugee communities who often lack the English skills, the work skills. That was where we started our program, was to help women get back, immigrant and refugee women get back into the workforce. Since then, we have opened up services to include shelter services, emergency shelter, long-term housing. We provide counseling. We provide legal services. We do restraining orders, marriage dissolutions, and child custody issues. And then we also have a 24/7 multilingual helpline where anyone can call 365 days a week and put in an intake and do an intake with us. So that way then our team can assess their needs and work on a safety plan the next business day. Again, we've been around 25 years. We're a much smaller organization, but our focus is really to bring in clients who need the language and the culture expertise from our staff.
And is there a particular language and culture that you service predominantly for the benefit of the listener who says, well, I speak Hmong?
Yeah, over the years, it's kind of when we first started was many of the Southeast Asian language, Vietnamese, Hmong, Laotian, Chinese. We still serve those languages, but I actually recently pulled some data for our last fiscal year, and our highest language is actually from the Indian country, Punjabi and Hindi. Is actually
Wow.
ranking high among our clientele at the moment.
And Joyce, Family Justice Center, I'm going to have you come back because it seems like with each of the entities, there's a legal part of it. There's a community part. There's an integration part, which I'll let you fill in the blanks on it. But if you would tell us a little bit about what it is you do.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you for hosting us too, Jeff. And it's nice to be here with my colleagues. I appreciate them so much. But the Sacramento Regional Family Justice Center, we provide services, free services to survivors of domestic violence, sexual assault, human trafficking, elder and child abuse. Doesn't matter what their gender is, what their age is. Our mission is simply to provide hope, healing, and safety under one roof. We have a lot of on-site partners, and we have about 40 off-site partners that we have memorandum of understandings with. So instead of asking a survivor to navigate dozens of agencies while they're experiencing one of the worst moments in their lives, we bring together these partner organizations in one safe place. So survivors can access advocacy, legal services. We're the lead agency in Sacramento that provides most of the domestic violence restraining orders and elder abuse restraining orders. We do counseling, housing assistance, medical support, law enforcement, prosecutors. We have children's services. We have a human trafficking program. We partner with Weave and My Sister's House in Ashlie on providing human trafficking services. We have a Camp Hope for kids. That's part of our prevention piece of our program, which I can talk about later. And then we have a huge training component to our organization where we train law enforcement and healthcare providers on assessing for high-risk cases. We have a high-risk team, so we train our officers on assessing those high-risk cases using a tool. We also train 911 dispatchers. A lot of training includes strangulation education and prevention for those survivors who have been strangled. That's kind of an overview of some of the services we offer. I think we all kind of offer sort of a foundation base, similar services, and then we work together. Collaboration is our piece. The Family Justice Center model is been recognized by Office of Violence Against Crime for a best practice model based. Really, what really makes it unique is our collaboration model.
And that's a big part of this conversation, because if we can stress one thing above all, it's the necessity to deal with each other, to work collaboratively where the organizations cross over in the services that you provide, which, as you've heard, each of you do in so many ways, especially in that human trafficking space, which it just is astounding to me, the fact that we see as much as we do, that we don't recognize what it really is. And we think of it as just one thing, somebody who's locked up or really held captive, when in fact it's so many other things. Let me ask, and I'll stay with you, Joyce, what are some of the steps that the agency's taken to mitigate violent actions?
Well, violence prevention really starts long before a homicide occurs. At the Family Justice Center, we use evidence-based tools like danger assessments, lethality assessments to identify those survivors who are at the highest risk of being seriously injured or killed. We really pay particular attention to, like I said previously, strangulation, access to firearms, stalking behavior, escalating violence, and that coercive control, because we know that these are all significant predictors of homicide. If you can predict homicide, then it can be prevented through education, high-risk teams. Our advocates work with survivors to create those personalized safety plans, obtain restraining orders, relocate families into safe housing, connect survivors to counseling and all the other services that sometimes often create barriers to seeking services like transportation. And again, we also you have to train professionals. I know Weave has been doing it for 40 years. Ashley's been doing it at My Sister's House. We're all out there training professionals. And you have to constantly do it because there's constantly people retiring, turnovers, and new programs. So it's just something that's ongoing. Prevention isn't really about one program. It's really identifying those high-risk cases early, intervening quickly, and surrounding survivors with support before that violence escalates.
Ashlie, let's go to Three Strands Global. How about what's happening there? I mean, you're in 17 states, so you're talking to a lot of different people. What's happening to mitigate the violence through Three Strands?
Yeah. So, the table, which is our drop-in center, we actually, it's really interesting. We've been in this work for 16 years, but in the last 2.5 years, we've had the drop-in center, and we have seen our clients in crisis or fleeing violence far more than we had the years before that, right? Before we opened the drop-in center. So I think for us, we, on the prevention side, the whole goal is to stop the crime before it starts, right? As little as 5 years old, all the way through. And we're a part of a lot of, like Sacramento Together in Sacramento, but across the nation, different task forces that we've been a part of and been privy to understand best practices in those places and then bring them home to Sacramento. And I think, when it comes to all of us, one of the things that you'll hear us talk about often is this empowerment. How do we make sure beyond a shadow of a doubt that we don't, we stop the crime and prevent it from happening? But how do we also empower individuals, our clients, to be able to live the lives that they desire when they're building capacity and they're thriving, right? How do we actually do that? And so I think that for Three Strands, it's truly no matter, man, woman, youth, how do we make sure that they're empowered to be able to do and live the life building capacity and thriving, and that recidivism or really preventing things from happening will happen. And so for us, it's the empowerment space, but it's also on that prevention space too.
Christine, you're the most multicultural piece of all this. How about within my sister's
Yeah.
house? What's happening to prevent violence in terms of actual programs?
Yes, I think in order to work in the prevention space, we definitely need to build strong relationships. I think as the newest member of on this leadership team, my observation is that we cannot do this alone, especially my sister's house for sure cannot. We are a small organization. We work with limited resources and staffing. So, and my sister's house recently went through a significant leadership change. And so one of my priorities has really been to rebuild and strengthen those relationships among organizations and professionals who work in the mission of preventing violence. So, and this includes the sister agencies of the leaders who are here with me today. And again, I think building relationships and coming to an agreement that we all need to work together is a very important component in moving forward. We cannot ask our community to change the way they behave if we ourselves are not modeling those type of behavior change. Um, so I am very grateful to build my stronger relationships with Joyce and Beth and Ashlie first and foremost. And then, I'm rebuilding relationships with law enforcement, with the DA's office, with schools, with hospitals, and other community leaders. And pretty much bringing like-minded individuals in the same room and developing an action plan to do this together. Because I think when we're doing it in isolation, the community doesn't really see it as cohesive. I think it see as we're just targeting one population, but all of what we do affect each other. And definitely education is a big component of prevention. And I think you kind of saw that when we hosted the youth conference the end of June, where all four organizations came together and say, hey, what are some of the educational components that we need to put out there? And from there, how do we move forward to the next step? And so I'm very happy to see that you have brought us four back together in this podcast, because I think we cannot stop at the youth conference. The youth conference was kind of just the beginning of what to do next. I think I've reached out to individual people so far, but I would like to start perhaps in the next 6 months to pull back together the same people and say, okay, we've done this. Let's reflect on this. Where do we need to go from here? And I think we just have to keep working at it, plugging at it. And like Joyce said earlier, people change in all the different entities. So we constantly have to educate each other and educate all of the different entities that we work with, and especially around culture competency and culture humility. We partner with Joyce and the Family Justice Center on her 56-hour advocate training, and we're constantly pivoting, constantly changing how we educate and train the audience and what to expect and what to look for when you're dealing with someone who's an immigrant or a refugee and they're experienced domestic violence or experience sexual assault. What are the red flags? You won't be able to get from them on the first meeting, perhaps the second meeting, the third meeting. So it's really about educating each other as well, and how to work with our with our clientele.
Thank you. And Beth, I actually saved you for last because you have so many programs that are integrated locally. I mean, at bars, at schools, at campuses. Tell us a little bit about your mitigation of preventing violence.
Yeah, our vision for a safer Sacramento region and a call to action to the region is when everyone acts, violence ends, which happens to spell weave. But we really believe that it's not just the responsibility of the 4 organizations sitting here today, but it's everyone's responsibility to ensure that survivors know where to go, feel safe, and that they're believed. So we have multiple programs, primary preventions in the schools where we're actually working with children and youth, hopefully to get ahead of them becoming victims and perpetrators in the future. But we're working with bars and the nightlife staff who might observe somebody in a violent relationship right there in front of them, or somebody being preyed upon by somebody predatory. We work with businesses with our Silence Doesn't Work Here program because people spend a lot of their time at work, and there's a great opportunity for coworkers and supervisors to notice what's going on, to really recognize what domestic and sexual violence might look like in the lives of their employees, and to make sure that it's safe for them while they're at work, but also that it's safe for them to go home. So we're out there teaching lay people how to intervene safely and how to be supportive, because that's one of the number one things we hear from survivors is, I just felt so isolated. I thought it was only happening to me. I didn't think that there was help out there for me. And having trusted people around them tell them, look, I believe you, what's happening to you isn't right, and there's help for you, is a very powerful next step for a lot of people in figuring out how they're going to keep themselves and their families safe.
I'm going to take a little slight detour from the questions, only because each of you can better explain what this domestic violence or workplace violence can look like in the grand scheme of things. Because I think there's the high level perspective of, oh, it's a physical harm, it's a capture, it's a kidnapping. Yet in many cases, it's not. It's in your environment. We know people who are in this situation. Does
Well,
anybody want to pick that up just a
I
second?
would love to. We talk about 6 different types of domestic violence because people get really fixated on the physical violence. And absolutely, as Joyce mentioned, the odds that you're going to end up dead increase dramatically if you've got physical violence. But that's not what many people are experiencing. And it's often not what people are experiencing early on in their relationships. So it's important that we talk about that emotional abuse, spiritual abuse, sexual abuse within a relationship, but also technological abuse, being stalked by somebody or threatened to be outed or have social media used against you. Financial abuse. Almost 100% of the people who are staying in our shelter programs have some kind of financial abuse that they're experiencing. And it's important that we talk about that because somebody might not be experiencing anything physical at all. However, they're being forced to work and they don't get to spend their own money, or they're being told they can't work. And the way a lot of this shows up in the workplace, for instance, is, somebody who used to go out to happy hour with you after work, but now their partner picks them up. I mean, that's the kind of thing that a coworker might see and go, oh, something's changed in this relationship. Or somebody who gets 100 texts a day from their partner. There's something controlling going on there in this relationship that I might want to pay attention to so I could be supportive of my friend or my employee. So it's really understanding all of the different horrible ways a domestic violence perpetrator might choose to control and abuse their partner, and to look at the whole person and what's going on for them.
Anybody else want to add to that?
Sir,
I think
I agree. Go ahead, Ashlie. Go ahead.
I was just going to say 2 words that we talk about often is that just piggybacking on what Beth said, is this is often, whether it's domestic violence or it's human trafficking, it's a crime that hides in plain sight, right? A lot of times we talk about that, and we as a team, we talk about the manipulation and the coercion. Coercion is a big piece, a word that it's hard to nail down, but there's a lot of coercion. Like when Beth's talking about control, coercion and control, that is part of that perpetrator's mix, if you will, manipulation, control, and coercion. And so how do we, as agencies, come alongside to be able to help a client understand that they're safe, first and foremost? And then after they're safe, how do we get the resources for them, right? So, but I think manipulation and coercion are big pieces for people, lay people, to understand that those two, along with controlling, right? That really is, those are big, important words for us to understand. It's not just the physical, right?
We'll be right back after we hear a few words from the wonderful organizations that help us deliver this content.
I'm James Beckwith, President and CEO of Five Star Bank. We're dedicated to supporting nonprofit organizations who advocate for the strength, resilience, and vitality of those they serve. When nonprofit organizations thrive, our community does too. By supporting the NonProfit Podcast Network, Five Star Bank is amplifying the voices and meaningful impact of our nonprofit community. We're Five Star Bank, a trusted nonprofit partner. How can we help you?
We are really excited to be part of the family and contribute to the work that you all are doing. CORE provides fractional and interim executive services, along with comprehensive back-office solutions that go into our client sites and do the work to give them the capacity they need in order to move through transitions, whether that's planned or unplanned. Or companies also work with our accounting and finance, back-office solutions, human resources, technology, and administration. The reason why our back office solutions add value is because we save them time and money, anywhere from 20 to 30% of what they would spend on that back office solution. We work in it so they can actually work on it. CXORE.com, and contact me directly at DTEAT@CXORE.com.
If you're interested in learning more about how CORE may help your organization, visit CXORE.com.
Hello, this is Scott Thomas with Cap Trust in our Sacramento office. I specialize in working with local nonprofits and associations. Annually, we survey private and public nonprofit organizations across the country to better understand challenges they see in today's environment. In our more recent survey, we heard concerns about proper board governance, mission-aligned investment, and how to implement alternative investments. If you would like a copy of the survey or to discuss your organization, look me up, Scott Thomas at captrust.com.
I'm thrilled to have Western Health Advantage partnering with us, as they do so much to support so many nonprofit agencies in our community. As a truly local health plan, you'll find individual and family options, employer options, plans for CalPERS and Medicare Advantage. From medical services to pharmacy, health and wellness support, as well as behavioral health care, Western Health Advantage has a plan that fits what you need. As an employer, for profit or nonprofit business, individual or family, you can find more at westernhealth.com.
Hi, I'm Brad Squires, CEO of Sacramento Venture Philanthropy. For more than a decade, SVP has brought together local donors, business leaders, and nonprofit changemakers to do philanthropy differently. Through pooled funding, hands-on mentorship, and programs like Fast Pitch and 100X, SVP helps nonprofits build real, long-term capacity, not just short-term solutions. If you're looking to go beyond writing the check and want to use your experience, your voice, your leadership to create a lasting impact and have a lot of fun doing it, now is the time to join SVP. Learn more about becoming a partner at svpsacramento.org.
Let's continue the conversation on preventing violence with our panelists, Beth Hassett of Weave, Joyce Bilyeu of the Family Justice Center, Christine Nguyen with My Sister's House, and Ashlie Bryant with Three Strands Global Foundation.
I think we have a responsibility to, as leaders of an organization, to make sure our staff is okay. You know, domestic violence, like Beth, it doesn't start with physical abuse. It often starts with emotional, mental, psychological abuse. They might not be getting hit, But that emotional, mental, psychological abuse maybe is beginning to feel like torture. And don't forget about there's so much violence on the freeway that's happening out in the parking lot, in the car, going down the road. And our employees are not immune from that. It's required that all of our staff go through our 56-hour training and ongoing training with understanding we know that this could trigger you. And let's talk more about it and make sure that they're okay. And I don't want to forget animal abuse too. These are all signs that us as leaders, we need to educate our staff supervisors on to make sure that our people are okay. Number one priority for me and our organization is, how does it impact the client, but how does it impact the staff too? How does it impact Family Justice Center and our community? Our staff and if you have volunteers and interns, what's going on in their life? So we have to make sure that they're all okay because they got to be able to provide services to others who are going through it. And how does that work if you're going through it yourself?
Christine, anything to add?
Yes, on top of everything that, all the leaders have just mentioned earlier, for the clientele, the community that we serve at my sister's house, you add on top of all the physical, the psychological abuse. There's also cultural, differences as well too. And, trying to have someone understand that, no, it's it's like I have to listen to my husband, that's what our culture believe in. I cannot leave my husband. We have children. And so, the complexity that's layered with the culture and the religious really makes it very difficult for our clientele to even talk about what they're experiencing because oftentimes what they feel and believe is that this is normal. This is normal in my country, and I'm going to bring shame to my family. We have so many survivors actually come through our shelter only to kind of get pulled back and be coerced and pressured to go back home because you are bringing shame to the family, especially in-laws. In-laws are constantly contacting because even though when they live in our shelter, they still have access. They have independence on who they talk to. And I hear all the time where they're going back because they say, you know what, we're going to try to work it out because I should be listening to my husband. The guilt that they feel in leaving the abusive relationship so that way they can have a future for themselves will sometimes surpass their own safety. And and wives and daughters who endure and sacrifice abuse are often highly regarded for their sacrifice. Those are the traumatic experiences and the dilemma that our survivors go through, and it's hard to kind of push through the culture expectation and allow our victims and our survivors to feel the self-love for themselves that they deserve better than this abusive environment and think about the future for your children. um you know it's tolerated in certain country doesn't mean make it right. And I think it's trying to work through that understanding and that process with our survivors.
And that's such a challenge because, as Joyce was saying, we know that the incidence of recurrence, as it happens more and more often, there's a greater likelihood that it's not going to end well. And when somebody accepts and feels that guilt and returns back to the situation they're in, which I know all of you see with your clients, it's not a matter of if, it's a question of when something greater than what you came the first time for is going to happen. Yeah, let's talk a little bit about the collaborative partners before we get to how you all work together, the other collaborative partners that you've got in the communities that you serve. Joyce, who are some of the other people that you work with that allow you to do what you do?
Sure. You know, many, many years ago, we worked in silos. I'm a survivor of domestic violence, and it was going from agency to agency, repeating your story, maybe getting re traumatized. Rather than working in silos, we work together. It's obvious today. I think one of the most exciting things about this panel today is that it does demonstrate what collaboration should look like. We have on-site partners. We have adult protective services on site. We have law enforcement on site. My sister's house, their legal team and therapy teams on site. So we have those. We have the Sacramento Child Advocacy Program on site, the Safe Center. When no single organization can stop violence alone, but when, like Beth says, when everyone acts, when everyone brings their expertise to the same table, survivors really do receive better services, and offenders then have fewer opportunities to continue the abuse. Every organization that's represented here today has their very own unique expertise and services, different populations, but our mission intersects around safety, dignity, preventing violence. Collaboration isn't about who gets the credit. It's about asking one simple question: what's best for that person sitting in front of us, whether it's a client, whether it's a coworker, whether it's your mom, what is best for that person sitting in front of us. I believe that the strongest communities aren't built on organizations working harder. They're built by organizations working together. And this panel is a unique panel. It's a really great example. Just like the Domestic Violence Prevention Collaborative, it's a community collaboration that's been around for over 20 plus years. Christine's on it, Beth's on it, I'm on it, Ashley's going to be on it this week. So, and Jeff, we'd love to have you come and visit one of them.
I would love
the collaboration, but we all work together for a common mission, if you will, to end violence in our communities and in our homes.
Ashlie, how about the collaborative partners that you work with in the communities you serve?
Yeah, I think that I think we, the four of us, as well as others, have been active is on the task force. Sacramento got a task force recently, and had those operations, and those stings have been incredible. And in Sacramento together, as well as the task force, there's the opportunity for the four of us, as well as others, to join in and to be able to share trends and things that we're hearing or seeing, whether it's tech facilitated abuse, or it is rise in crisis versus what we were seeing before. So it's this space is open place where we can communicate and hear from each other what we're seeing in both our clients, as well as those trends that law enforcement or our hospitals and medical folks are seeing all together. And I think in the stings in particular, it's been such a wonderful thing. Our staff has truly enjoyed, whether it's FJC or it's Weave or it's my sister's house, to be able to sit alongside our partners and work with the client as they are exiting a violent situation, and how each, to Joyce's point earlier, how each uses the skills that agency brings as one unit to a client who might be experiencing that is so unique, and it really does bring our community together. So, I think that that the four of us feel really fortunate to be able to work together as closely as we do in different ways, and our staff, extended staff especially. And there is also the task force, as well as Sacramento Together, and as well as some of the coalitions at the state level that we sit on around how do we end violence and crimes against those who we serve.
And Beth?
I think they've all covered a lot of the collaborations that we're all part of. I want to just emphasize that it's also the people who don't necessarily see themselves in this field. So those businesses, those employers out there, I think schools definitely see the risk of the students that they are working with, but they don't always see the importance of allowing us to all come in and do that prevention work up front. Some communities are a little more resistant to that, and there just isn't time. We work with beauticians and folks in the beauty industry because, they're privy to a lot of stories and a lot of disclosures from their clients, and they don't know what to do about it. So, that's one of the main things that Weave focuses on, and that I think the rest of these partners do as well, is just making people understand what they're looking for and what the impacts are on the lives of people, and how somebody showing up might indicate that they really need help. So it's all eyes on that potential victim, I think, is one of the most important things about the partnerships that here in this virtual room, but also out in our community.
And that's very well said, because I think when we give thought to what's happening, the issue isn't that it's somebody we know. The issue isn't you're talking to your hairdresser or your barber, whoever it might be, who's telling you a story about somebody else, when in fact what they're explaining to you is a domestic violence situation. And you could find yourself working with an organization that has nothing to do with domestic violence. It could be a substance abuse organization. It could be a caretaking organization. It could be a senior care facility, because it's so prevalent. It's just often, for lack of a better description, misdiagnosed.
Mm.
And we don't see it the way that it needs to be seen. Christine, I didn't ask you, but are there any other collaboratives that you work with?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that we're pretty much involved at some level or one or another with the same types of organizations that the other agencies are involved with. But I just wanted to add that we're getting ourselves we're aligning ourselves with a lot of women-owned businesses, um, and they're coming forward and they're raising their hands and say, how can we help? How can we uplift? And many of them have been survivors themselves. Many of them have gone through the experience, and this is their way to kind of give back, not just monetary, not just in terms of knowledge and time and resources, but whole. Many of them invite our survivors to come and listen to women empowerment, and I think it's about you can do it. It's about being cheerleaders. I think these small businesses are come to say they and basically wrapping their love around our survivors and say, sis, I know you can do this because I was there once. And I start at the bottom, and let me walk alongside you, and how can I uplift you? And it's really powerful to see, because oftentimes it's that love that we lack when we're trying to uplift ourselves. And so I'm forging a lot of partnerships with small business owners. And I think just the business community in general are good partners in this work, because they can provide, you know, employment opportunities for our clients. And that
Mhm.
employment opportunity and that paycheck is really key to independence and to building their self-confidence and rebuilding their lives. So those are a couple of new initiatives that I'm working on at my sister's house.
I'm hearing the same thread through each of you. Sometimes we kind of get wrapped up in our thought process of it's the organization that takes care of these things. But in fact, it's the community that takes care of these things. It's the individual that takes care of these things the best way, because they're the voice to bring it to the organization's attention. And each of you are in that space now, looking at it from a community perspective to the individual perspective, whether it be at a workplace or an office or uh, a social gathering, which I don't think we always think of it that way. And we hear it that way many times when we come home, we have a conversation with our spouse or significant other, and we're going, oh, wow, that's a bad situation. That situation could turn into something that requires your intervention or the client's intervention with you. And that's what this preventing violence is really all about, is a better understanding of it. If each of you could give me an example of something where you used one of the other's services, and obviously not in any specificity, but just we had a situation where I had to reach out to, and here's what it looked like.
I mean, I could start. We are a large agency, so a lot of people come our way, and language barriers are no joke in this community. I mean, Sacramento is one of the most diverse communities in the country. And we regularly, and just 2 weeks ago, reached out to Christine's team because we had somebody who spoke a language that nobody on our staff was able to communicate with them with. So really tapping into that expertise, and my sister's house having staff members who speak a variety of languages is such a great resource here in this community, because even if they're not providing the exact service somebody needs, just having somebody who can speak the language so that we can get the help to the survivor that they need is critical, and something we can't do on our own.
Beth, I wanted to let you know that we put the survivor and her baby in shelter. She actually was offered a position at our cafe, at my sister's cafe.
That's
That's
so
awesome.
awesome.
That's awesome.
It's, we're working around childcare issues with her, but yes, I think that's a really great example of how I was, we're able to help, a client over from Weave.
Yeah, so we, one of the things that I have really loved having the drop-in center is that there's so many referrals that come. We have that's what we call at Three Strands Global Foundation the Safe Care model. So, and all of us get different grants, and sometimes those grants are restricted. And so, if they're, with the Safe Care model, it allows us to have sort of unrestricted area of whatever it may be that the client might need. And so, we get referrals from my sister's house or from Weave or Family Justice Center that comes to Three Strands because, this might not fit in one of the many different restricted areas of what we have as funding, but for us, it's like, okay, but Three Strands can actually handle that and take it. And so it's so great to be able to see any of the staff from these great organizations come through the table doors, our drop-in center, and there's a referral, and, or to be able to use our clothing closet and get clothing, both employee clothing as well as other things from the table from our drop-in center and take it out. And we use all of this when it comes to housing. Both my sister's house and Weave, our staff is constantly being able to have a first sort of line of call to, is there a housing that's available for a client that comes through that's in crisis. And if not, then how do we navigate, housing vouchers together, all of us? And each agency has been super open and generous around, hey, we've got extra vouchers, or we do, right? How do we share that understanding with each other? So for us, it is so important to be able to have open lines of communication, especially because Joyce shared in the beginning, she had to tell her story over and over. Well, we don't want that for our clients, any of us. And so if we can break down those barriers of communication and make sure that a client feels supported and safe in a place where they don't have to retell, and they can be referred from one to the other of us, then more power goes in that community space, right?
Joyce, example?
Yeah, I'd have to agree. I think I've accessed all of the agencies for clients because we want what's best for a client, And if we can't offer it here at Family Justice Center, we had one woman who had 5 kids, no driver's license, didn't speak English. Law enforcement calls me on a holiday. I'm sitting in the parking lot at Rayleigh's because I was just getting ready to go in. And they had this woman at McDonald's. She had no cell phones, no nothing. So, and we needed 5 car seats. So, we got her into a hotel. We've got cell phone for another agency, La Familia, got the car seats. We were able to get the transportation. And the woman she's just doing, this was, I think, 2 years ago, but she's doing great now. Her and her kids, they're safe and they've gone through a really good program. And, you can't do this alone. I've spent more than four decades working with Survivor. And the one thing that has never, ever changed is that people don't just need services, they need hope. And every one of these agencies, if there's something we cannot offer, we're going to be able to give them hope. Every survivor deserves to be believed. They deserve to be safe and to know that they don't have to walk this journey alone. That I'm going to do a warm handoff with you. I'm not just going to hand you a piece of paper and say, go to Weave or Three Strands. I'm going to make that phone call or drive them over there. And like Beth, I believe, mentioned earlier, violence prevention isn't the responsibility of one agency. It's the responsibility of an entire community. And when we can all come together, share our expertise, and put survivors at the center of everything we do, we don't just respond to violence, we can help prevent it. And together, with all of us working together the way we do, we can create a community, our Sacramento community, where safety is the expectation, not the exception. So...
And Christine, we've heard incoming to you because of the language or cultural differences. How about outgoing with any of the other organizations?
I mean, we talked about how our four organizations coordinate services for our clients, but I really wanted to talk about something that the three leaders have provided for me personally, because I think part of collaboration is modeling, partnerships that are productive and uplifting, and because then your staff sees that. So I know that as a new CEO of my sister's house, I've been able to reach out to Beth and say, "Hey, Beth, what's your understanding of this regulation? Can you explain this to me?" And she gives me and she breaks it down. And so, I look to Joyce and Beth and Ashley as my mentors in this field. And then from there, I make sure that our staff work well with their staff, and that there is this smooth coordination of services and respectful communication among all of us, because ultimately when we respect each other's strengths and weaknesses, that ultimately is a win for the clientele. There's no need to ask a lot of questions. But, I've called up Joyce and I say, "Joyce, my legal team, we're sitting on top of each other right now. You have wonderful space. I just visited your space. Can we take over some square footage, some real estate?" And she gave us prime real estate with windows where plants can thrive. And so our legal team is now, sharing space at the Family Justice Center. And same thing with Ashley, "Hey, I need to put together an event. Can I use your space?" Because what we lack at my sister's house, the three organizations have. And so I'm reaching out and I'm being creative, maximizing the resources out there, partnering with everyone. And Beth, and during the Christmas time, say, "Hey, Christine, we have these extra toys." Absolutely. I'm going by. I said, "Yes, sign our clients up for the toy drive." So I'm trying not to reinvent the wheel, but at the same time, how can I support you? But ultimately, the three ladies here have really supported me quite a bit in the last year that I've been near my sister's house, and really developing that infrastructure between our four organizations.
And the four of you are an incredibly powerful cohort of people in our community doing what you do to prevent violence and serve clients when it does happen. Closing comments. If each of you could just give us a brief statement on how violence can be prevented, to the other organizations that are listening, to the community at large that's listening. Say, here, just this one thing. Beth, you want to start?
I'll start. Yeah, I think that people forget that somebody experiencing violence is a whole person, and they likely aren't even identifying as a victim necessarily. They're just a person trying to live their life and take care of themselves and their family and be safe. And I think it's critical that people realize you might intersect with that person in all sorts of ways. Like you said, through a drug and alcohol program, at work, on the playground with your kids, and everyone being attuned to the fact that somebody might need a little nudge, a little help, even just an acknowledgement that what they're experiencing isn't safe or isn't okay. That goes a long way in supporting survivors before things even get too terrible. So I think just recognizing that, not everybody's defined by what they're experiencing at the moment, but but they might need help that you are the right person to give to them.
Christine, anything to add to that from your group of people?
I think one of my advice would like I like to. I mean, my advice would be to listen to communities like this. Like, it's a whole person. And I think when we start to put, I like to, for us, like, as a community, to stop putting band-aids on people. Because I think the band-aid might short term solve the symptoms, but long term it doesn't change the community makeup of we are the community response to violence. And so I think, listen to communities we serve, involve them in the solutions as well. Like during the youth conferences, youth, they're saying, "Hey, invite us. give us a seat at the table and we will help you with the solutions. And I think, I think as I move forward, this is the kind of the approach I want to start taking, is bring the community along.
Great. And Joyce?
Yeah, I kind of have like these 5-step recommendations. First, you want to build those relationships before the crisis happens. Collaboration starts long before you need it. And then second, listen to survivors. They're the experts in their own lives, and their voice should really shape your services. If we have a gap in services and it's a continuing gap, that's where I'm going to build my programs. And third, use those evidence-based tools so you can identify those people who are at greater risk of future violence. And then fourth, like we all do, break down those barriers of transportation, childcare, language, technology, and financial assistance. They're just as important as the services themselves. And finally, never underestimate the power of hope. When someone has experienced trauma, what they often remember isn't just the services they receive. They remember how you made them feel, how they felt when they left there. A little kindness and compassion and collaboration can literally save lives. And Jeff, I have to thank you, so much, because you're doing your part just by having this podcast and meeting with us at the Stop the Hate Crime and getting the word out. You're creating your part in creating those pathways of hope for others who might be listening into this. And I would encourage anybody, if they're going through this, to contact any of the four of us on here so we can get support for you.
Thank you. And Ashlie, close us out.
Yeah. So we always say that prevention changes everything. It truly does. And so how others might work in this space is really, putting survivors' voices first. What Joyce just said is paramount. And so, for us, that's leaning into that survivor advisory board. We've really, people have different experiences. And so how can we listen to all those different experiences and meet them where they're at? All four agencies meet individuals where they're at. So if prevention changes everything and we're meeting survivors where they're at and we're working together as a community, then those are three of the most important building blocks. And then the last pieces that I would say is sort of 4 and 5 is, how do you, if you're already working in this space, work together with us? If you are new to this space, how do you understand what we're all of us are already doing so that we can fill gaps as a community and make sure to not only meet survivors where they're at, but also create that safety net underneath our clients so that no one falls through the cracks, because barriers exist and so do the cracks. And so we want to stop people from falling through the cracks as much as we can. And then the last piece, I love what Joyce ended with, which is hope. I think that all of us every single day have to remind ourselves of that pathway to hope. And so when we're reminding ourselves of the pathway to hope, we also then have the capacity to be able to give hope to those that we serve as well. So for us, we always say it starts at home. We've got to remember where our hope lies and where that foundation is, and how do we make sure it's self-care wise. We take care of ourselves so that we can be able to give hope to others as well. So that would be what I would share.
Well, Ashlie, Joyce, Beth, Christine, thank you so much. Thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing. And most importantly, for what you do to serve those who are in these unfortunate violent situations. You've demonstrated through this conversation the value of collaboration, which is the greatest emphasis we've got today in our nonprofit ecosystem. And it's the need and the necessity to work together for a better outcome. I appreciate all of you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you for listening to the Nonprofit Podcast Network. We hope today's episode inspired you and gave you a deeper look into the work of our local nonprofits. If you believe in our mission to amplify their voices, please take a moment to leave us a positive review and share this episode with a friend. It helps more people discover the incredible work happening in our community. And don't miss future episodes. Subscribe to our weekly updates and monthly newsletter at nonprofpod.com. And if you're part of a nonprofit that would like to be featured, we'd love to hear from you. Just visit the Guests tab on our website. The Nonprofit Podcast Network is recorded and produced at Hear Me Now Studio with generous support from our outstanding partners. CapTrust, fiduciary advice for endowments and foundations, online at captrust.com. Western Health Advantage, local care with community impact. Find the plan that fits at westernhealth.com. CORE, executive leadership and comprehensive support services. Visit cxore.com. And 5 Star Bank, a local trusted advisor to community nonprofits for over 25 years. 5starbank.com.